Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the best platform for your e-commerce shop and the differences and the advantages and the disadvantages between the different platforms. In particular, we're going to be talking about Magento, used to be called Magento, it's now Adobe Commerce, and Shopify, which are probably your go-tos depending on what your needs are. What's up, Donald?
Hi, Ogden. Yeah, so let's start with Shopify since that's the most popular e-commerce platform.
Yeah, okay. So Shopify is yeah, it's the most popular platform. You can easily create a shop online. It's super easy to get started. And the costs, the initial costs are not too big at all. It makes it easy to start accepting payments, get a nice looking design, and basically get started with e-commerce. I think it's probably the best option for getting started in e-commerce overall. Shopify is a hosted platform, so it's basically a cloud. So there are good and bad things about that. The good things would be that you're not in charge of things like performance, security updates, upgrades, things like that. The bad part about that is that you don't actually own the shop, technically. Shopify owns your shop and they're renting it to you. And that applies to the apps as well. The more apps you add, the more your monthly bill will grow. However, people get focused on this. I don't think this is the biggest disadvantage because Adobe is kind of trying to do the same thing with subscriptions on Adobe Commerce extensions. I think the biggest problem is that you're not able to make changes that you want to make eventually. Eventually, every e-commerce store gets to the point where the changes in the theme and the design or in the front end code are not enough. You have to do things that are more than that. And then you either need to find an app that works like that, or you have to build your own app. Most or vendors don't have the resources or the skills to build their own apps. So they're kind of stuck. And most of the time, the vendors say, well, I'm sorry, the owners say, well, it would be good to have this, but, we're not going to be able to have it because, the Shopify limitations. On Adobe Commerce and other hosted platforms, you don't have this limitation. The store is completely yours. You generally pay only for the hosting costs, and you can basically buy extensions and install them and have them. You don't really own them legally, but it's as close to owning as it gets because most of the extensions are modifiable. And if you have a Magento developer, they can do that for you. So basically, you can make the store do whatever you want. It can be, you can turn it into a multi-vendor marketplace. You can turn it into a flash sale site. You can install all kinds of things, add all kinds of things, and make all kinds of modifications. Basically, the sky's the limit. The downside there would be that you have to do the upgrades, you have to do the security updates, you have to troubleshoot performance if performance gets bad.
So besides making it easy for store owners to install new features by just simply installing the apps, there's other useful e-commerce features such as discounts. Shopify has a pretty good discount feature which allows store owners to offer different incentives to the customers. There's a good way to analyze reports about sales, and also the abandoned cart recovery has been significantly improved by Shopify, and that's all free to use for any store owner.
Yeah, but you have those things in Magento as well, of course.
Yeah, so Magento has those features as well, but setting them up and using them is a lot smoother on Shopify.
I suppose I don't think discounts are too hard to use on Magento. I think the abandoned cards email maybe would be that's a good example, but there are extensions for that as well. The price rules in Magento are pretty flexible. I would argue they're more flexible actually than things on Shopify. And the reporting, of course, if you need advanced reporting, Magento has. advanced reporting. So you can get actual business intelligence reporting in Magento as well. But you could get those with Shopify. So those are not kind of the killer features. I think what people mostly, I think we saw a very interesting dynamic where people who run Magento, like stores that run Magento, or even other platforms like WooCommerce, and, whatever, PrestaShop, they tend to think that the grass is greener on the other side, and they go to like a Shopify meetup, and Shopify tells them, hey, you won't have to do all these things like upgrades and pay developers to do things. It all just works on Shopify. It's basically the Apple pitch. And they go back and they say, well, the Shopify thing is great. I'm going to move to that. And then they do that. And there are good migration tools to move from Adobe Commerce to Shopify. And then they're happy for a while. They do kind of start to understand that, okay, I do need to pay for all of these apps. The bill is kind of getting higher. But that's generally not the biggest concern. Eventually, they run into the brick wall of I need this thing and I can't actually make it happen because I can't modify the backend shop. I can't modify, in other words, I can't modify anything other than the visual part, basically. And so that's when some of them actually go back and actually go back to Adobe Commerce, to WooCommerce, to PrestaShop, and actually understand, okay, now I kind of have the idea of how I should be limited in terms of things I add, because the more extensions I add, the less, the more problems I will have, basically, right? Because the more code you have, the more bugs you will have eventually. And so they are kind of have the discipline from Shopify of not adding unnecessary extensions. And without extensions, Magento is pretty great, actually. It works just fine, no problems at all. It's the extensions that can break your store. So then those people go back, install just a couple of extensions that they really need, do the modifications they really need, and then they tend to be happy with a store they fully control. Others, perfectly happy, stay on Shopify. Mostly, if you're a smaller business, you don't have that much of a requirements for something specific, you're going to be probably happy with Shopify, and you should probably stick with Shopify.
And what about people who are looking to migrate away from Shopify? I read somewhere that basically Shopify locks away your store, and since they basically own it and don't make it easy for store owners to migrate away from Shopify to another platform. Is that or not?
Well, the only thing that's locked in is the actual backend code. So there's no way to copy the store, but you can copy the products. You can even copy the orders because Shopify API allows that. So there are tools like Cart to Cart or other tools that enable you to move from Shopify to another platform, and it's going to mostly work. You're not going to be able to move all the information. You're going to be losing the visual design as well. So you're going to have to recreate it or change it on your new store, but it's totally doable. I mean, you're right. Technically, they are locking you in, but it's not such a big deal that I think it's not a surmountable. Some people would be maybe scared of this and not moving because of this particular thing. I don't think that's a good thing. And the same thing goes for the other side, like moving from Magento to Shopify. Yeah, it's a big disruption. You have to think differently, but you can totally do it, and it totally works. And you're going to get a lot of benefits as well, especially if you're a smaller store. You won't have to pay, expensive developers, and you're going to be able to do most things yourself. And it's quite a, liberating kind of feeling for store owners to move to Shopify. So definitely, if you can, do. But like I said, sometimes you do need those killer features you have developed or customized or have them, as extensions, and then, then you're kind of limited to that.
Yeah. So basically, for small businesses, it definitely makes the most sense to use the Shopify because it's the easiest to set up and it has all the essential features built in. So that's definitely something that I would recommend to people just starting out in e-commerce.
Yeah, I agree. The setup costs, I think, for Magento are way higher. And probably not going to be starting with Magento anyway, unless you have a team that can, do that cheap, because it's not actually technically hard to do. It's just that some development teams are going to charge you way more for setting up a store. To, quote thousands of dollars for setting up a very simple store, which I think that shouldn't be like that. But overall, yeah, it's way easier to start with Shopify. But I would say not maybe small businesses, because there are plenty of large businesses on Shopify too. I think the criteria should be: do you need special things that are not available on Shopify? If the answer is yes, then then you will have a problem. Maybe just play with Shopify. You can play for free. You can try to set things up and see if you run into any brick walls, or you see that there are apps that provide that, but maybe they're not affordable, whatever. So do your research before you do it, or have somebody help you do the research, whatever. But it's important to do that before you get committed, because once you start getting orders and stuff like that, it's much harder to move away. So ideally, you would know before you start. Okay, well, nice talking to you as always. I have no idea what we're going to be talking next time, but I'm sure it's going to be something super interesting, exciting. So make sure to subscribe. Thanks, Alan.
All right. Thanks. Bye.